Hello and welcome to National Drive Electric Week, Dallas-Fort Worth. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Alexandra Paul. I am a longtime EV driver. My first electric car was in 1990. That was 30 years ago. I'm also a founding board member of Plug-in America, and I'm featured in the documentary on electric cars called Who Killed the Electric Car? I'm very proud also to be working today alongside Marvin Campbell, who's going to introduce himself now.
And hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here at National Drive Electric Week. My name is J. Marvin Campbell. I'm a Los Angeles actor, mechanic, EV advocate. I've been driving electric cars fueled by sunshine for almost 20 years, and I can't recommend it more highly. Our program today will be in two parts. Part one will consist of a variety of videos made by EV drivers and other supporters, and our first panel, EV 101 Basics. Part two will be our Pioneers panel, a reunion of the director and cast of Who Killed the Electric Car. Their panel is titled Birth of the EV Movement and Where We Must Go Now. And this just in, thanks to our production partner, EarthX TV. We will be streaming the documentary Who Killed the Electric Car after our final panel. You'll find that right on this page on earthxtv.org. So stick around. And now let's go to Alexandra.
That's so exciting, Marvin, about Who Killed the Electric Car, because if you watch that documentary that was filmed 15 years ago, you will see a lot of the people that are involved in this panel today, which will be really fun. See how we age. Let's intro our first EV driver video, which is John and Natalie Packer of Carrollton, Texas.
Hello, EV community. I'm John, and this is my wife, Natalie, and we're the average everyday EV users.
And we're here to tell you the top 10 reasons why we love driving our EVs. Number 10 is just a good investment. We will spend less money over the course of 2 to 3 years owning our EV than if we had a gas car.
Number 9, more efficient. Any ICE car out there.
Number 8 is the wave of the future. We get to say we were some of the first people to drive an electric vehicle when in the future everyone will have one.
Number 7, it's an awesome community. The EV community is a part of the renewable community, which is global.
Number 6, it's just a fun car to drive.
It's fun to drive and fun to be in.
Number 5, who doesn't love a fast car?
Come on.
Number 4, it's a conversation starter. Anytime we park our cars at a restaurant, people are coming up and they're looking at it, they're asking questions, and we get to have great conversations with complete strangers.
Number 3, no more gas. Really? Do I even have to elaborate?
Number 2, no maintenance.
Come on, no maintenance? Really?
And the number 1 reason, we get to protect our Mother Earth.
That is a no-brainer, and everyone should get on board with that. All right, we're the average EV users, and we love to talk about our EVs. See you later. Bye.
Wow, wasn't that a great video? We have so many fantastic drivers all over Texas and all over the States and all over the world. Our next EV driver video is Stephen Blackburn of Dallas. He is assisted behind the camera by Audrey Cho.
For more than a decade, people have asked me what it is I like about electric cars. And I always tell them it's great to be able to charge your car with solar panels on your roof instead of having to go to a gas station and fill your gas tank up with carcinogens. But between you and I, the real reason is because electric cars are so much fun. Let me show you.
Oh, those two videos were about electric cars. Now let's talk about electric buses. Trinity Metro is one of the 2 transit agencies in Dallas-Fort Worth with an electric bus, and they have sent us this video, and it's all about their electric route.
Trinity Metro is thrilled to participate in National Drive Electric Week DFW and help accelerate the widespread adoption of electric vehicles of all kinds. Traveling between downtown and the Cultural District in Fort Worth, the Dash is a sleek and innovative transportation option. These bright red battery electric buses go out and travel, on average, 100 miles a day on just one charge. With state-of-the-art amenities like device charging ports, onboard Wi-Fi, perimeter seating, and custom floors, the Dash is a welcome addition to the Trinity Metro fleet and went into service September 22nd of last year. It can't get much better than celebrating the first year of service in partnership with National Drive Electric Week. The Dash doesn't want any presents, but would just like to invite you along for the ride. Over the course of 12 years, these buses are estimated to save $400,000 in energy savings. Trinity Metro is doing our part to take care of the environment while taking care of you, safely and consciously getting you to your destination.
All right, wasn't that great and inspiring? We've seen cars and buses, and now let's go to motorcycles. The next video is with Brian Desimone, General Manager of Maverick Harley-Davidson in Carrollton, Texas. And this video is going to be on Harley's all-electric live wire motorcycle.
So I own a 2020 Harley-Davidson Livewire. This is honestly the best purchase that I've ever made when it comes to a motorcycle. I probably owned 6 or 7 street bikes in the last few years. Had a few Harleys, other brands, but man, when it comes to electric power, there's nothing else like it in the world. I had to have this after the first time I rode one. It was just incredible. The amount of torque that you have down low, as soon as you touch the throttle, the ease of riding it. This is my commuter. I ride this thing every day. I've got a couple thousand miles on the bike already. I ride it back and forth to work, and it doesn't get hot like a normal motorcycle does. So in traffic, especially here in Dallas, this thing's incredible. The range, I can go well over 100 miles on a charge to it, which is perfect for a bike like this. And the amount of technology that is in this motorcycle, between the traction control, the ABS system, the stability management that it has, I can ride with confidence and know that when I'm on this machine, that the bike is going to do everything that it should so that I can enjoy the experience. And man, the sound that it makes is so unique. I've never had anything like it, and I just can't say enough good things about owning an electric vehicle. Harley-Davidson has got it down. It's state of the art. It's an incredible machine, and it's my ultimate freedom machine.
Wow, those videos were terrific. Thanks to everybody who submitted them for this event. And now we're going to go on to our panel portion of this event, which is the EV 101 panel. First, before we get to the panel though, I'd like to talk a little bit about Plug-in America, which founded National Drive Electric Week and is its presenter today, along with the Sierra Club and the Electric Auto Association. Plug-in America is the nation's leading voice of the EV driver. In a nutshell, it was founded to accelerate EV adoption, and it's now 15 years old. National Drive Electric Week is now 10 years old, and last year was celebrated in every state and 8 countries. So now it's time for our first panel. I'm going to let each panel introduce themselves the first time they speak. And then after the panel, we'll have time for questions. So please just post them in your platform's chat. All right, I'm really excited. We have an incredible bunch of people here. Our first topic is about getting your first EV. And I'm going to go to Smitty. Smitty, tell us the basics. What is the difference between an EV, an electric vehicle, and a PHEV, a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle?
An electric vehicle is powered entirely by the battery. And a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, like I have, one of the first Chevy Volts in the country, has a motor. So when you exceed the range of the battery, it kicks in at like a traditional hybrid car. But the good news is that with increasing range in batteries, we need to have that gas backup less and less and less. And so the transition is beginning to happen.
And Smitty, did you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Oh, sure. My name is Tom Smith. Everybody calls me Smitty, and I'm director of something called the Texas Electric Transportation Resources Alliance, which does policy here in Texas and works with the legislature and the various agencies to promote the systems we're going to need to electrify transportation in Texas. And I'm also privileged to be on the Plug-in America board as well. And so altogether, we're making the EV revolution happen.
Yes, you are. Yes, we are, all of us on this panel.
All of us.
You out there watching. Smitty, one more question to follow up on the initial question. This is one that everybody who doesn't have an electric car, it's their first question to people who have an electric car. How far can they drive on a charge?
Depends on the car. Most new cars are now averaging 240 miles per charge. Some of the long-range Teslas will go 400 miles, and there's some European models that will go 600 miles. But the most important lesson I've learned is no matter what kind of car you drive, about 240 miles is about as long as you can go on one bladderful before you have to stop and recharge. And that really is the limit for most of us.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much, Smitty. So Amy, tell me a little bit about yourself. And also then I'm going to ask you, how long does it take to charge a car, the various cars, EV, plug-in hybrid? If you can sort of talk about the different cars and the different levels of charging.
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Amy Ashley. I am with Austin Energy, Electric Vehicles and Emerging Technologies. My role there at the utility is centered on bringing equity and environmental justice to our underserved community members. So back to your question, how long does it take to charge? So that's really sort of a loaded loaded question and loaded answer. And the reason why that is because it really depends on the battery size. It also depends on whether or not you are charging from 0 to full, or if you're just topping off. I have an Austin Energy customer. We were just having this conversation just the other day, and he tells me it takes him 5 minutes to charge. And what that is for him is he pulls into his garage, he plugs his EV into the wall outlet right next to his refrigerator, opens up that refrigerator door, pulls out a cold beer and pops the top, goes inside, props his feet up on the couch, watches a little TV, has a little dinner, and he's done. It's one and done. He plugs that in, it's set it and forget it. So he says it takes him all of 5 minutes. So that overnight trickle charge is really the most convenient, but there's other charging available. If you don't have that plug in your garage, you can go and charge at public charging network, which is all over cities. That's a level 2 typically. And depending on if you're topping off or going from 0 to full, it's going to take probably 4 to 6 hours. You're not going to have that time. But if you're stopping off at shop at the HEB, you've got 40 minutes that you can add a 15-20% amount of charge. Then we have fast chargers that can charge in minutes, 30, 45 minutes. It just depends on where you are in your charge that day. And to help understand, we ask people to look at the analogy of your cell phone. So if somebody asked you, how long does it take to charge your cell phone? If you ask me that question, I wouldn't know what to tell you. I have no idea, because I'm always topping off. I'm always plugging in whenever I can, because I don't want to go without that charge. So we're using that same behavior model to look at that. So not a straightforward answer to that question, but I hope that gives people a little perspective.
Thank you, Amy. And I agree, because I've had my Chevy Bolt for several years, and I really don't know how long it takes to charge, because it's charging while I'm sleeping, or if I have a particularly busy day, which rarely gets to the almost 300 miles that I can get on my Bolt, I would be opportunity charging. So it really is a question that we EV drivers, we don't worry about too much, because the electric cars cover 99.9% of our driving habits very easily. So Buzz, We've heard a lot of people talk about the importance of getting drivers to understand the concept of the total cost of ownership. How do you approach this? Can you explain that to us?
Absolutely. I'm Buzz Smith from the blog, The EV-angelist, spreading the great news of electric vehicles. I'm also a TechCetra board member like Smitty, and I was the #1 EV salesperson in Texas for 6 years in a row until I retired this year. Back to your question, fortunately for me as a salesperson, that's where EVs really shine. For a person that drives 12,000 miles a year, their monthly fuel cost will be about $30 to $35. That blows people's minds. They're spending hundreds of dollars a month on gasoline. Most people don't realize there's no oil filter or oil to change in a fully electric vehicle. Gas owners are just used to spending $40 to $60 every few months for oil changes. There's also no transmission fluid or filters, no spark plugs. You get the idea. Lower fuel and maintenance costs lowers that monthly cost of ownership. And to get what an electric vehicle really costs to own, once you know the monthly payments, subtract all of those monthly savings from it. And that's really your total cost of ownership. And when you compare that to a gasoline car's total cost of ownership, you'll find that they're actually competitive today. And the savings go on forever, even after the loan is paid off.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to move on to Lori and Michael. Please tell us a little bit about each of you, and then let's discuss incentives in Texas.
Sure, thank you. I'm thrilled to be part of the program today. So I'm Lori Clark. I'm a program manager for air quality at the North Central Texas Council of Governments. We do regional planning in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'm also the Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities Coordinator. So we do a lot of work promoting electrification in the transportation sector. So in terms of incentives, everyone in the country has an opportunity for a tax credit of up to $7,500 for an electric vehicle. And then the state of Texas also has a rebate of $2,500. So that's up to $10,000 that can be taken off the cost of a new electric vehicle. Now, one caveat, you cannot use these for Teslas, but any other make and model has an opportunity to take advantage of at least one of these. And then for people who need a place to charge, there is a federal tax credit for charging stations as well. And again, in Texas, we have a rebate of up to $2,500 for a publicly accessible charging station. And that's especially useful for people who are in multifamily developments or want to have a place to charge at their work. So those state incentives are actually first come, first serve. So it's a really good time to jump on the bandwagon and take advantage now. And I'll turn it over to Michael for more details on local incentives.
Thanks, Lori. I'm Michael Conklin. I'm co-founder of Evolve Houston. We're a nonprofit here in Houston, Texas, and we're looking to clean up the air, improve air quality, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions through electrification of transportation. So really, to build off of what Lori said, there's a lot of state and federal incentives, but even at your local level, there's probably things that you can take advantage of. If you're in San Antonio has a public charging program where you can take advantage of 150 public chargers for a flat rate of just $5 a month. I mean, think about what you're saving on gas, $5 a month, you can access all the charging that you would ever need. If you're in Austin, you have access to the same type of thing. Austin has an excellent charging network, just over $4 a month to access that, including fast charging. Plus, Austin Energy will also reimburse you for up to 50% of the cost of a home charger. So that's a great incentive as well. Now, if you happen to be in the Houston area, if you're in Entergy Texas's territory, they have a $250 incentive towards the purchase of a home charger. And you can also take advantage of programs through Evolve Houston. So I'd like to talk a little bit about some Evolve Houston programs. One of them is really fun. Even if you're not buying one, maybe you just want to go test drive an electric vehicle. We have an incentive for that. Right now, we have a partnership with GM and 14 participating Chevy dealerships in the region. If you're in the Houston area, go on to evolvehouston.org during National Drive Electric Week, and you'll see our promo up. You can get a $50 gift card just for test driving an EV. Now, in addition to that, maybe you're not an average consumer. Maybe you're a fleet manager and you're wanting to do something with your fleet. So soon to be launched, Evolve Houston is going to be doing a partnership with fleet managers, helping them assess their fleets, and build out the business case and choose suitable models for replacement and a roadmap for the future. Now, all of those are great incentives, but that's not all. There's probably more, and there's going to continue to be more, which is why I'm happy to share that Evolve Houston is rolling out a grant tracker tool that will go live on Friday. That grant tracker tool will help pair you with incentives that are available in your local area as long as you're in the state of Texas.
Wow. Makes us all kind of want to move to Texas. So thank you so much, Lori and Michael. I want to go back to Buzz now and ask for the folks out there who are thinking about driving an electric car, but they're not really sure where to start. Can you tell us a little bit, Buzz, about how did you get your first electric vehicle, and help our viewers choose which model might be best for them?
Sure. Well, it's actually a car accident. A distracted driver rear-ended my car, totaled it. Gas was $4.50 a gallon back there. And I went and test drove a car. I put a deposit on it, ready to buy a gasoline-powered car. And when I sat down and did the math, this V8, I could afford the car, but I couldn't afford the gas. So that's when my wife was actually the smart one. I can't take credit for this. My wife said, you know what, we ought to go take a look at these electric cars. Maybe we'll save so much it makes it worthwhile. And I went and test drove a plug-in hybrid, and it literally changed my life. I changed my career a year later to become a car salesman.
Oh, you mean you went from a non-car salesman to a car salesman who because you were so inspired that you wanted to get EVs into the hands of other folks?
Absolutely. I was a manager at Apple before when I had the car accident. So I realized that moving somebody from gasoline to electricity was very similar to moving them from Windows OS to Mac OS. And I thought, I'm going to be a natural at this. So I went and did it.
Well, our friend Paul Scott, who's in the next panel, I think he has a story sort of like yours too. So electric cars can be very inspiring in so many different ways. Now, can you help viewers choose which model might be best for them? Because there's so many electric cars to choose from now.
Absolutely. And when you look at news stories, it's always the $80,000, $90,000 vehicles that are most expensive that get the publicity. But you can pick up a used electric vehicle for $10,000 or less. You can get brand new ones around $26,000, $27,000 or less. And what's important to look at, don't overbuy. Take a look at what your daily commute is and base the range that you need on that, plus a fudge factor. A lot of people are so concerned about, I've got to have 400 miles of range, 500 miles of range, but they may only drive that once a year. I call that the 2% car. What you really need to look at is how many people are in your family, how far do you need to go to commute, how often do you take long trips, because those savings I talked about earlier, if you have family that comes in, say once a year for Christmas, and you've got to haul a bunch of people around, you don't need to go buy a 3-row SUV. Take that savings and rent a gigantic top of the line SUV for that one time a year that you need it. Don't overbuy is my advice.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Thank you. I find, since I've been driving cars for 3 decades now, that that Americans overestimate how exciting their lives are and how much they travel, because they really don't travel as far or as often as they think they do. And they can do very, very well with an electric car. And then the once a year that they might need one, just rent for a couple $100, and you're well worth it. Okay, so let's move on. We've talked about charging a couple of times in this first section of the panel, and now let's focus on it. So, Amy, you mentioned about electric car drivers who might be renting an apartment, or a house. Is it possible to have an electric car and a charger if you're a renter?
Absolutely. So we'll talk first about if you're not living in a house. We've got over 40% of Austin's population. And that number's probably upped a little bit since I last checked. But those folks are living in multifamily here in Austin. And so how can we bring charging to them? And it really is an amenity to multifamily housing. So we've been working to expand multifamily charging for a few years now, and we're doing quite well. And we're actually not only in really high-end condos and such, but we're also in some of our affordable housing as well. So we really want to spread that infrastructure across the city in that access. And we find that one of our most popular charging stations is in multifamily. That's affordable housing. So we know that there's that traffic there. There's the option. If you don't have charging at your multifamily home, you can get it at a public network. So for example, Austin Energy, we have over 1,000 ports across the Austin area, and that's growing every day. We've got 24, about to be 30 fast chargers all around the city. So there is that access. A lot of people also have workplace charging. And that's a great deal because sometimes that charging is completely free. So to that customer. But yeah, if you are at home and renting, I mean, sure, if you have a garage, you just pull in. Most people have a regular wall outlet in their garage. You just pull right in and plug that car in and you're good to go.
Great, thank you so much. Buzz, tell us about 120 versus 240 and the cost to install these chargers.
Okay. The 110 charger comes free with the car, so it doesn't cost you anything. It plugs into a 110 outlet, which is all over your house, so no big deal there. The 240 chargers will run somewhere in the $400 to $700 range if you get a bunch of bells and whistles. The government, by the way, has an up to $1,000 income tax credit if you install one in your home that covers the cost of the charger, its installation, and any, putting in the 240 circuit if you don't already have one. So there's government assistance on that as well. Now, we have two of those 240 volt chargers at our house because we have 3 plug-in vehicles here and we need to make sure they all charge fairly quickly so we can all share. But when I go visit my mom in Houston, I'll take my 110 charger with me and just plug it into a wall outlet at her house. One other thing on that last question, unfortunately, early in the revolution, a lot of apartment dwellers were left out of this. And that's not the case anymore. And what you have to understand is, although EV can be charged every day when you get home by plugging it in, much like your cell phone, it does not have to be anymore. Nowadays, with so much range that these cars have, you can start thinking of the battery the same way you think of a gas tank, and maybe only charge once every 5 to 7 days. And I'll ask gas customers when they think they have to charge every day, well, do you top off your gas car every day on the way home? And they'll say, well, of course not. I just have a little less range every day. Exactly. Electric cars are the same.
Thank you so much, Buzz. Smitty, what do you like most about your electric vehicle?
I like not having to go to the gas station, particularly in the midst of the COVID pandemic. You never have to touch a gas pump that might have been contaminated. But the other big thing that we've hit on time and time again is these things take almost no maintenance. I put tires on my car and replaced the 12 volt battery. And I've got 150,000 miles and 11 years on this car. And it just keeps on going and going and going and doesn't cost me much for maintenance.
Yeah, that's what a lot of us like about the cars. Thank you so much, all. We're going to move on to the third section of this panel, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Panelists, remember to please introduce yourself if you haven't spoken before. And so I'm going to ask Dr. Shelley Francis, please tell us, how can cities and utilities help accelerate EV adoption for low-income communities?
Good afternoon, everyone. So nice to be here. I'm the co-founder of EV Hybrid Noir, which is the largest network of diverse EV drivers and enthusiasts with members and chapters around the country and beyond. I approach this work as a former medical school professor who has facilitated extensive research in environmental public health, as well as the social determinants of health. And I'm also a current board director for the Electric Auto Association. One additional tidbit before I get into the question is that we're also the co-founder of EV Noir Mobility Intelligence Consulting Group, and we work on e-mobility best practices and equity best practices. So to address your question about how cities can work better, cities and utilities can work better to accelerate EV adoption. So there's multiple ways that they can work better. First, is really focusing in on engaging more diverse communities in the conversation. What we know is that frontline communities, specifically Black, Latinx, and tribal communities, have not always had a seat at this table. And so those are the communities that bear the disproportionate impact and effects of air pollution. So that's one thing that they can do. Second, as utilities are moving forward with these bold, innovative programs, we can look at what some of our colleagues are doing. So last month, Southern California Edison approved funding of $436 million to deploy charging infrastructure. And not only are they deploying additional charging infrastructure, which would be about 38,000 new chargers, they're focused on multifamily and low to moderate income communities. So that's the type of bold engagement and approaches that we need in this work. And also third, you have to do education and outreach in a culturally relevant manner to these diverse communities. So those are 3 steps that cities and utilities can take to further amplify electrification among more diverse communities.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I appreciate that. Amy, would you like to weigh in here?
Yeah, that was a great segue. Thank you so much, Shelley. And I just want to say it's so nice to be on the panel with Shelley. We get to do these kind of things a lot together throughout the country, and I just admire your work so much. So yeah, at Austin Energy, we are a public power. And I would just say that, our role in this, we're essentially a city department. So we work closely with the city of Austin. And our role is really to address energy burden, environmental justice with our underserved community members. We need to assess that, and we do that by creating human-centered design programs like Shelley was talking about, where we're taking feedback, actively involving the community members in our design of programs. The last thing that we want to do is to deploy a program that is not wanted or needed. We really want to reach out and do something with the community, not to the community. We want to provide real solutions for real people, and that's a multitude of mobility options, and a lot of them are on electric. We need to look at equity, and one of the ways we do that is by citing the infrastructure for charging in our low-income communities and our communities of color, because those have been typically left out. When I first started Austin Energy 3 years ago, we were west of I-35, which I-35 is sort of the corridor that has really divided our community since 1928. So now we have expanded in 3 years. We're all over. We're in East Austin, Southeast, Northeast. We are all over with 1,000 ports, and we'll keep growing that. And we're getting feedback from the community. Come to us, bring this technology, include us. I'll speak really quickly to the schools outreach. The outreach is a huge sphere of influence for the utility. We have a program called EVs for Schools, which combines electric vehicle charging with EV curriculum at public school campuses. And this is just amazing. The students are in an educational living lab. They're watching their heroes, the teachers plugging into their EVs. Then they're getting the curriculum, and it becomes sort of a part of the culture. It's the norm. Then the kids are taking this home to the parents. All of our schools that have launched this program are serving a measurable amount of economically disadvantaged students. So we're doing our best to really share the resources with people and students and kids who have not maybe been around this type of technology or the resources. So those are just some ways that kind of support some of the things that Shelley was talking about, and let you know how we're doing our part here at Austin Energy.
Thank you, Amy. Shelley, there's a stereotype out here, and it used to be very true. Tell us if it's changed, that EV drivers are wealthy white guys. Well, I'm not a guy, but that who live on the coast, which was really what it was like 15, 20 years ago. What's happening now with electric cars and the drivers the people who are buying them?
Yes, thank you for that question. So yes, that is an interesting question. And yes, there was this stereotype that EVs and this type of technology were out of reach for more diverse communities. there's a lot of gaps in knowledge. And so there's a number of different things that we can do. So first, we need to really have resources so that we can educate more communities and increase their knowledge and awareness of this technology and let them know that it's accessible to them. So whether it's a new or used EV, electric bikes, scooters, buses, there's a lot of community engagement, education, outreach, and awareness that really needs to happen and take place. There's one of the reasons that we found in our work and why we founded the membership organization EV Hybrid Noir is that it's really important in terms of who that messenger is. And so what we say in our work is that messenger matters. And so really our mission is with the membership organization is to accelerate EV adoption and increase awareness to more diverse communities, particularly the Black, Latinx, and tribal communities, along with other communities who have not often been engaged in this conversation. And so what many people don't know is that, and this has been well studied, is last year Consumer Reports issued a report and they found that Latinx and Black consumers have the highest propensity for EV adoption. So it's really important that we lean into this finding and be more intentional about engaging these diverse communities. We leverage our membership because being that messengers matter, people need to see others that are reflective of their communities, somebody that could be potentially be their neighbors, sharing their experiences, how great it is to have an electric vehicle, use this technology, and how it can be beneficial to them in their everyday, transportation experiences.
I'm curious about that report. Why are Latinx and people of color have a greater propensity to buy EVs than white folks? Is that what the study said?
So yes, when they compared them to other racial and ethnic groups. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And so part of that reason is that car culture is very different in the Latinx community and the Black community, and that is related to a number of different factors. One is just thinking about how the impacts of residential segregation and discrimination and social and structural inequities have really informed the experiences around transportation and mobility. So that's one of the reasons. And then another reason is that in terms of like the technology and access, Latinx and African-American/Black communities have a lot of spending power and buying power. And one of the ways that they're leveraging this buying power is through the purchase of automobiles.
Okay, thank you so much. That's really interesting. Amy, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think she did great.
Great. So what can stakeholders do to engage more diverse communities in the EV ecosystem? How do we, you mentioned the messenger being important. What other ways, and you can expand on that too, Shelley, can we accelerate EV adoption in Latinx, tribal, and other ethnic communities?
Okay, I'll go first. So particularly in these communities, you have to make the technology accessible. You have to let people know that it even exists. So again, this marketing and outreach and education is really critical. Then you have to deal with the infrastructure deficits. What we know, what we find and see across the country is that many of these communities exist in charging deserts. And the charging desert means that there isn't the resources, there's no chargers for people to utilize. So if you're living in an apartment or a condo or a townhouse and you're not able to just plug up your car in your garage or in your driveway, you need access to charging infrastructure. So that's one of the things that we also have to address. And then also you need to address incentives and rebates. So what we know in markets that are more progressive and that have really higher rates of EV adoption, it's not happening in a vacuum. There are policies, there are incentives, there are infrastructure and education that has been promulgated to really help facilitate and grow the ecosystem. So we need point of sale rebates, we need cash on the hood for folks to be able to purchase used and new EVs. And also as the market continues to grow, we're seeing a variety of different electric vehicles in terms of new vehicles coming to market, which means that there's even more opportunities for people to engage, as well as the opportunity for people to purchase used EVs that start at $5,000 to $6,000. So it really makes it an affordable technology. we also need to really emphasize that there's not only opportunities to be consumers, but we also have opportunity for workforce and economic development in the clean transportation sector.
Thank you so much, Shelley. Amy, would you like to add anything to that? Especially Shelley brought up charging, and are there any government incentives to have cheaper public charging in different neighborhoods?
Yeah, well, what I can say, and thank you, Michael, for the shout out earlier, because he kind of described a little bit about one of our programs, which is called Plug In Everywhere. And it is a program that offers out unlimited charging to our public network, which again is over 1,000 ports in the city of Austin for $4.17 a month. That's $50 a year. So we've been offering affordability for quite some time. Another thing that we're doing is we have a brand new EV buyer's guide that we've launched. We have an auto dealership program. We're working hand in hand with auto dealers, and that's where I met Buzz. And we have this online website now where consumers can go here locally in Austin and find where those EVs are available, that inventory. We get a lot of feedback, and I'm sure you all have experienced this yourself or have heard this, that I want an EV, but I can't get one. I can't find one at the car dealer. Well, we've now created this EV buyer's guide where people can actually go on and find where the inventory is today. We have a 2.0 version that's launching later this fall that will focus on used EVs so that we can help our low to moderate income customers have a better buying experience. They can actually identify what is an inventory today that they can buy that's a used EV.
Thank you very much. So our last question for this panel is going to be to you two, and both of you. When we think about, and Shelley touched on this a little bit, but when you think about EV adoption for different communities, for some it's adopting cool technology. For example, it was for the environment. For others, it's saving money. Can you talk about why accelerating EV adoption is often more critical in some communities than others?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So I'll give you a real world experience. So, currently we're all navigating the COVID pandemic reality. And so our team has been saying for years that prioritizing frontline communities in the clean transportation conversation is really critical. And so COVID has really brought this attention to the forefront and held a magnifying glass over the inequities. So whether they're structural or institutional inequities, they're really facilitating the disproportionate burden of COVID that Black, Latinx, rural communities are seeing. And I see clean transportation and electric vehicles really has the opportunity to mitigate the impact of overexposure to air pollution. So we have the opportunity to provide more solutions, more education and awareness and access to this technology, because for many communities, transitioning to clean transportation is truly a life or death matter.
Thank you. Amy, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll add just a couple of other layers here that has to do with this conversation, especially as we were talking about smart city initiatives, which EVs are a huge part of that. One of the things that's super important that will help reduce some of the health factors that Shelley's talking about is getting our bus systems electrified. Our Cap Metro here in Austin, they announced Earth Day on 2019 that they would no longer be purchasing any new buses that were not electric transportation. So we've been in the process of helping them transition that. They've launched already, there's 2 buses on the street, and then they've got 12 more coming. And there's going to be approximately 200 buses in that fleet that will be electric. Austin Energy is putting the depot together to charge those buses. It's actively happening today. We have a community element that we really want to bring people in. We had the kids at one of our inner city schools here, elementary students, design the artwork for these buses, and they are so excited. And I can't tell you how, these kids, and I work with them because I'm out doing outreach with students, all kinds of students, and they are so excited about green energy. The young people really understand, I think, more than anyone, that climate is going to be one of the greatest challenges of their generation. And so they really do want to get involved, and they will be the next EV drivers. The gas car is going away. They will be the new EV drivers, and we are going to facilitate that. And that's why it's imperative that we include everyone in the community, not just early adopters and not just people with money. Everybody deserves access for health and environmental wellness.
That's so true. And here in California, of course, our governor has said that in 15 years, California will no longer be selling gas cars, and it will only be electric cars. So that's really exciting. Might as well start early getting folks used to electric cars. So Marvin's now going to take viewer questions. He's going to be looking in the chat and asking the panelists your questions for 10 minutes. I'm going to hand it over to you, Marvin.
Right on. We have some audience questions here, and they're this first one I'm going to send to Smitty. You know, with all these electric cars, what are we going to do with all these batteries?
Great question. Today, about 80% of the batteries get reused. They're put into homes or offices or sometimes even stadiums as an energy storage mechanism. And so you store the renewable energy or the solar energy off the rooftops, and it helps you power your house or office or your stadium during the day. And as time goes on, we will join in, we believe, in this country with a number of other more civilized countries and establish recycling standards for batteries. Today, there are a number of technologies that enable the battery case to be reused, and you pull out the anode and cathode and you recycle the precious metals, and they go into chip manufacturing, and hopefully those chips will be recycled back into the next generation of electric cars. It's a critical issue, and we're on it.
Well, that's good to hear. And we have another one here. It's okay. I'm going to send this one over to Buzz. People are always talking about efficiencies, and please compare the efficiency of internal combustion with the efficiency of a battery electric vehicle.
Well, there's several facets to that. One is a gasoline engine is much less efficient than an electric motor. An electric motor will generate 100% of its torque starting at 0 RPM. So one of the things that you'll notice is when you suddenly punch the accelerator, an electric vehicle leaps forward, and a gasoline powered car, you may get some hesitation there. The cost of electricity versus gasoline is vastly different. So the savings is approximately 60% of what you would spend if you were driving a gasoline car versus an electric car.
Nice. Nice. And now let's look at the next one. This is a real chestnut. We always get this one. People ask, why can't I just put a windmill on top of my electric car so it spins when I drive down the road, charges the battery, and I never have to stop to charge? Smitty, give me a good answer to that.
Because you're likely going to break that windmill right off. And we haven't developed flying wind turbines yet. That's a disaster waiting to happen.
Right.
Prototypes, however, where you see solar panels wrapped around the car. And while today it's not going to give you a full charge, it certainly helps boost the amount of energy that is recharging your battery while the car is sitting. I expect that by 2030 to be commercialized, and we'll really begin to bear the fruit of a renewably powered automobile, at least for part of the energy needed by that car.
Nice. Okay, I've got a question here for Michael. As far as Texas is concerned, and why are most Texans buying an electric car? I mean, is it because of an efficiency deal or a performance deal?
No. I think that most people who buy electric cars buy them because they're great cars. There's all kinds of reasons that go into it. You know, some people, they like the sustainability part of it, and that is important. But let me use myself as an example. I bought an electric car after I drove one. So the first time that I ever got into a Tesla and took a test drive, I knew after I hit the accelerator, which I floored it because I heard it was good. Once I hit that, I knew that I didn't know when I was going to buy a car, but I knew that my next car was definitely going to be an EV and probably a Tesla. So if you look at what Texans are doing and what they're buying, I think there's a few things that come out. They like performance, they like safety. Teslas are incredibly safe cars. They like convenience. My wife has now gone from being an EV non-believer to an EV believer after I bought my Model 3. She thought EV doesn't sound good, it sounds weird. I like my my SUV that I have just fine. But now she's too pretty to go to the gas station. So she's going to stick with EV for the future because it's more convenient. And now that we're used to that experience, the fact that we go home, somebody said 5 minutes to charge, it's a second to charge. I get out of my car, I plug it in every night. That's all I do. Go in, I sleep, it's fully charged in the morning. So the idea of, taking a special trip to go and gas up, or I'm on my way to work and now I have to take a morning off of work because I have to take it in for maintenance because, I need an oil change or I need, spark plugs change or something else. The convenience factor is huge. So I think it's really all of these things together. And finally, we can't overlook the fact that Texans are buying more EVs because everybody is, because the market is changing. If the last time you looked at an EV was in 2017, there was a lot less charging, there were a lot fewer vehicles, and the prices were completely different. So if the last time you looked at EVs was 2017, you need to go look now in 2020 because there's charging everywhere. The prices are competitive, there's cars in every class, and it's great.
Right. Right. I know what you mean about the convenience. Most people who drive gas cars do not realize how much time they spend in a gas station. And when you add that up, it's just crazy.
Or
okay.
Going and getting their car tuned up. Like, so somebody mentioned earlier, the oil changes and the.
Oh, exactly. And what I've been waiting for him to do, like a really nice truck, because, in Arkansas, if you could just show people, look, this thing's faster off the line than your truck, and it gets, 120 miles gasoline equivalent, they like that, but only if it'll beat their truck, then they're into it. But to a person, every real gearhead that I've ever gotten into an electric car, like people that drive hot rod Mercedes and hot rod BMWs, every one of them went and bought a Tesla. And one guy, one of my clients, he went and bought a Tesla that day. Okay, we have another question here. Oh, it's a good one. Anybody can answer this. What is the most frustrating question that you get asked as an EV driver?
Oh, I'd love this one. Even when I sold them, the question was, well, what's it going to cost me to replace that battery pack? And I would just tell the customer, well, who cares? And they would look at me real weird. And I said, look, it's covered for 8 years, 100,000 miles. And that's not just the battery. That's the electric motor, the drivetrain, the charging system. So you're covered. And we're already seeing electric vehicles that have gone hundreds of thousands of miles. Smitty mentioned his going, I think it was 150,000 miles earlier. That's a young EV. One of the earliest Volts out there from 2011 has already gone 500,000 miles on its original battery pack. So you're not going to have to replace it. And even if you do, you typically never replace an entire battery pack. There might be one module that's eventually gone bad. And so you just swap that out with a new module.
Perfect. Okay, let's see. We have an audience question for
time, if we could hold that and if it works for the panel. And we're getting some notices from the powers that be that we have to move on to the final question, which goes to Amy. Amy, what would you say is the one takeaway from the panel?
Oh, well, we've had so much great content. It's hard to say. I think what I'd like to do is bring in one of my colleagues, one of my team members who's actually on listening in, watching in. This is a colleague who is a thought leader, a scientist with millions of years of experience. And I'd like to introduce Stevie, the EV11 T-Rex. Hi, Stevie. The question is, what is your main takeaway from this panel? I totally agree. It's time for an evolution. Thanks, Stevie. Stevie just did the shimmy, shimmying off camera. We've had a wonderful time with Stevie, and Stevie's brought a bunch of inspiration to our new marketing. We have a digital video campaign that we launched to reach everyday people, to talk about all the things that we've been talking about today, about the ease of use, the affordability, the no more oil changes. And we've done this through outreach with social media. We're going to show you a couple of videos here. We also provided videos, by the way, in Spanish, because we have a lot of Spanish speakers here in the Austin and Texas area. The first one that's going to feature Stevie. We are in the live music capital of the world here in Austin, Texas. And Stevie is, of course, in a band. It's called Stevie and the Rexies. And the band is about to rehearse. And as they do, they're plugging in their amps, and then they're going to plug in that EV to show you how easy it is to plug in that car. And then the next one is going to feature Stevie, and we call it the breakup. And it's where Stevie's friend is breaking up with her mechanic. And it's in Spanish, but if you don't speak Spanish, all you have to do is watch, because you're going to understand everything that's going on there. So I hope you enjoy the videos.
How do I say goodbye to the gas pump? I just plug in. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Drive electric. Save with Austin Energy.
Yo sé que este último año hemos pasado mucho tiempo juntos, pero creo que necesito un cambio. No eres tú, es mi vehículo eléctrico. Mejor seamos amigos. Prefiero todo con menos mantenimiento.
Conduzca eléctrico. Ahorre con Austin Energy.
Well, that was good. Now we would like to remind everybody that there is a plethora, a myriad of electric vehicle resources available on the Plug-in America website. That's pluginamerica.org. That includes an EV support program, which is an online and telephone shopping assistant for EVs and chargers. PlugStar, which is an online EV shopping tool. There's an EV purchase guide, which is a list of available EVs and plug-in PHEVs. And there's also a used EV buying guide. And next up, we have a really nice video about the Tesla Cybertruck. It's an artistic interpretation of the Tesla Cybertruck by a California artist named Anne-Marie D'Agostino. And she has built this Cybertruck with recycled plastic materials provided by Carbon Light Recycling and PenPack Packaging.
I'm in Riverside, California at the Carbon Light Plastics Recycling Plant. I've been using their materials to build a life-size to scale Tesla Cybertruck. I use plastic bottles and plastic sheeting. That facility is amazing. I love big spaces and I love the ceilings and the expanse. It was extremely challenging, but great people and great fun. The impact of this plant, I'm really overwhelmed with their capacity. I think the Tesla Cybertruck is absolutely amazing. National Drive Electric Week is about introducing people to all kinds of electric vehicles. Want a test drive?
So we're going to be seeing some more really good videos before we start the second panel of this event. And the next video is Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson, who has served as mayor since 2019, and he was previously a member of the Texas House of Representatives.
Hi, I'm Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson. Welcome to the 2020 National Drive Electric Week. The City of Dallas is excited to participate in this amazing virtual event developed for North Texas. Dallas has already committed significantly to electrifying transportation over the years. We have long had electric rail and buses, and we recently began to allow electric scooters in our city. Dallas also has the largest number of electric vehicles registered in North Texas, and the third largest number of any city in the state. As mayor, I have made improving our city's environment a top priority. I created the first ever Dallas City Council committee devoted to environment and sustainability issues. And this year, through the work of that committee, the City Council unanimously passed our first ever comprehensive environmental and climate action plan. Transportation is a significant piece of that plan, and electric vehicles are the key to achieving success. We hope to implement incentives to increase electric vehicle adoption and use, and do it in a way that ensures equitable access for all communities in Dallas. Electric vehicles will help us save energy, improve our transportation network, and support clean energy jobs. So, drive electric and make Dallas a cleaner, stronger, better city.
Right on. That Eric Johnson, he's a cool cat, you know. Let's see. Coming up next, we have a video about the second annual North Texas Timed EV Road Rally for the Encore Trophy. Encore Electric Delivery is Texas's largest transmission and distribution electric utility.
Road rallies have been with us since the 1894 Paris-Rouen horseless carriage competition sponsored by a Paris newspaper, Le Petit Journal. Prizes were awarded to the official winner, Albert Lumate, who drove a 3-horsepower Peugeot. During National Drive Electric Week, we once again encouraged the public to explore the joy and satisfaction of EVs as a driving and ownership experience. For the second time, Encore Electric Delivery sponsored a trophy for the rally winners, this time in multiple communities throughout our Texas service area, who undertook a short landmark course and came to the closest to a run for record time.
All right, I'm ready to go. Daniel, you got my instructions ready?
Sure do, they're right here.
Perfect. Let me get my mask on and let's do this.
This circle, and we're going to add the light, we're going to take a right.
During the rallies conducted in 5 cities, large and small, rally participants visited historical, cultural, and environmentally significant landmarks throughout the participating communities. Each photo waypoint on the Dallas route, for example, was selected to underscore one of 8 domain areas of their comprehensive environmental and climate action plan as described in accompanying rally material. Encore and the communities we serve are preparing for the rapidly increasing number of EVs. Most people think of this as just having enough chargers in public places, even though most EV owners only charge at home. Or they think of the emissions improvement as the only positive impact. There's a lot more to EVs than this. While the government is incenting these clean and efficient vehicles, and as they and other groups lean into promoting public awareness or assessing and revising policy to meet transportation or environmental goals, Encore is making sure that everything is ready for your EV. Preparing our delivery infrastructure and actually leveraging EVs to make the grid itself more efficient are in our future and yours. When we get there, we'll all have more money in our pockets, more time to spend on the things most important to us, and a cleaner energy future. At Encore, we power your lifestyle.
And now we have the winners of this EV Road Rally, presented by Jim Greer, Encore's Chief Operating Officer.
This is Jim Greer with Encore. We are pleased and excited to have partnered once again with Plug in America, the North Central Texas COG, EarthX, the Tesla Owners Group, and our partner cities to execute this year's rally. And we continue to work with all of them throughout the year on related topics of energy efficiency, transportation electrification, and environmental stewardship. Encore is very excited about the future of electric vehicles, and we are actively working to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place to meet your needs. I'm very excited to announce this year's winners. From Allen, we have Rob and Amanda Herman. From Dallas, we have Steve Blackburn and Audrey Cho. From Irving, we have Simon and Danielle Mahon. From Jacksonville, we have Jennifer and Bart Stewart. And from Southlake, we have Craig and Carrie Manning. Congratulations to this year's winners.
Congratulations to all the participants of that road rally. And next up is EV driver Nicole Lindman of Flower Mound, Texas, with her Kia named Gigawatts.
Hi, I'm Nicole. Meet Gigawatts, my 2015 electric Kia Soul Plus. She's got about 70,000 miles on her. She's quick, fun, and a quiet ride. Why do I drive an electric car? To reduce my carbon footprint. I try to reduce, reuse, and recycle as much as I can. We got solar panels on our house recently in order to make sure that we are getting power from a renewable resource and not a dirty coal power plant. Electric companies do have rebates and incentives and programs for EV owners. The last program I was on, I could drive 1,000 miles on $4 of electricity. What ICE car can do that? Maintenance is crazy low on EVs. In the 5 years, I've gotten the tires rotated, cabin air filter changed, and a set of tires. That's it. No expensive spark plugs, valves, catalytic converters, any of that stuff to go wrong. Technology's come a long ways in the past 5 years.
Well, that was a cool video. You know, my last EV was a Kia Soul, and I really like that car. Our next video is Leilani Munter. She is a professional race car driver, environmentalist, and documentary filmmaker who drives her EV on sunshine.
Hello, National Drive Electric Week, North Texas. My name is Leilani Munter, and I'm a former professional race car driver, an environmentalist, and a documentary filmmaker. And I've been driving my electric car for 7 years and over 94,000 miles now. And with the solar panels on the roof of my home, I'm able to power both my house and my car. And I feel an incredible sense of freedom that I'm able to drive on sunshine. I know that I'm very lucky to have been able to be an early adopter of electric cars and solar power, and I'm so proud to be a part of this sunlight revolution with you. Happy National Drive Electric Week.
Wow, Leilani Munter is an inspiring person, isn't she? I'm proud to call her a friend and an inspiration to me also. And now I'm really excited to introduce this as a driver of a Volt and currently a Bolt. I'm excited to introduce this Chevy video, which was made exclusively for y'all today.
Well, that was a nice video. I have to admit my Chevy bias. And our next one coming up is on the dealership experience. It's from sales representative Gisela Baker and her helper, Buzz Smith, in a 2020 Chevy Bolt from Classic Chevrolet in Grapevine, Texas.
To turn it on, all you have to do is simply put your foot on the brake pedal and push the start button.
Is it on now?
It is. The only thing to... It is quiet. The only thing that gives it away is our little welcome tone.
Okay, and what's this?
This here is our flow chart. It'll show us how energy is going from the battery to the motor and then to the wheels. It'll also show how energy travels from the wheels back to the battery.
So the energy goes both ways?
Yes, absolutely. The car will actually capture any extra energy that comes off as we're decelerating, and it'll send that back to the battery. And we call that regenerative braking.
Sounds interesting. Okay, let's do this.
All right.
Sounds like it has some decent pickup.
Absolutely. With an electric vehicle, you're actually going to have immediate torque. So there's no waiting around for the power like there is in a gasoline or diesel. All you have to do is hit the accelerator and we take off. That sends us from 0 to 60 in 6.3 seconds.
Now notice the lightning bolt on there keeps changing from yellow to green. What does that mean?
Yes, it's measuring our energy output as well as our energy input as the regenerative braking activates. So when it turns green, that's showing how much energy we're capturing and sending back to the battery.
And do you have to do anything to capture the energy?
Nope. All I'm doing is lifting my foot off of the accelerator.
And so it generated 12 kilowatts just then?
Yes, it did. All I have to do is shift the drive towards me once.
Well, it feels like you downshifted a manual transmission car just then.
It does. We're not actually downshifting. Instead, what we're doing is making the car more sensitive.
And so if you coast now, how much energy will it generate?
Right here, I'm gonna go ahead and lift off the brake pedal, and there it just keeps climbing. Yes.
That's twice as much.
Uh-huh.
And that's just by driving an L.
Exactly. You can indeed do one pedal driving. And see, we've come to a complete stop now.
Wow. So is recharging the battery very complicated? You know, do I have to make sure I unplug it at a certain time, or?
Not at all. In fact, it's just like charging a smartphone. I'll show you how in just a moment. But quite simply, you plug it in. It's as easy as plugging it in. Hear the beep, you see the green light, and you know it's charging.
So we're wrapping up part one of our National Drive Electric Week Dallas-Fort Worth event. And I want to thank all the panelists, all the people who submitted videos, and to you, our viewers who are watching here today. For those of you who still have more questions, we have another great panel coming up, so stay tuned and you will be able to submit questions there too. I want to remind people to visit Plug in America's website for electric vehicle resources. It's a fantastic website, pluginamerica.org. And I want to introduce now our next panel moderator, Dan Neal, a man I admire very much. I've known him for a long time, ever since I got involved with electric cars. And he is a Pulitzer Prize winning auto columnist for the Wall Street Journal. Welcome, Dan, and welcome to your panelists.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. Thank you, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, EV lovers across the world. It's a great pleasure to be here. And it's a great pleasure to moderate what is, in fact, the first reunion of the cast of Who Killed the Electric Car, that blockbuster documentary brought to us by, well, you know who. We'll be speaking to Chris a little later. And this is an opportunity for the cast members to reminisce and also to reflect on what are our next steps. A lot has changed in the time this movie's come out. The Revenge of the Electric Car took place with a vengeance, and so we'd like to talk to him about that. And don't forget, after this, we'll be streaming Who Killed the Electric Car right here on earthx.org TV. That is earthxtv.org. One more time, earthxtv.org, which has been streaming this webinar. Now then, the deal is I'm going to call on our panelists, and they're going to introduce themselves, and they're going to briefly respond to my softball questions, and then it'll probably break down into anarchy and lack of discipline. But so we're going to start with Mark. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, Mark Geller, and tell me what, at the very beginning, what was the very kernel of your inspiration when you started thinking about electric cars all those many years ago, and how long was it?
That was about 20 years ago, and I'm Mark Geller, one of the co-founders of Plug-in America. And so I got my first EV, a Ford Think City, in 2001.
Wow, Ford Think City.
A very impressive vehicle.
Wow.
And that was after more than a decade of covering AIDS activism as a news photographer, mostly for the gay press. And so when the California Air Resources Board and the automakers were kind of giving up, well, they were giving up on electric cars, and our cars were being taken away from us and being crushed, some of us felt we couldn't stand for that without a fight. Just as ACT UP had made good trouble in the face of all that death. And so a period of protests began at dealerships, which was well documented in the movie Who Killed the Electric Car.
And at some point you met your fellow dissident, Paul Scott. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Paul, tell me what was your first, what is your earliest memory of this awakening and awareness?
Well, I had just installed a solar system on our house, and when I realized, oh my God, there are cars out there. I just barely heard of these EVs that were available at the time. This was 2002. So we test drove one and bought one immediately. And so on winter solstice of 2002,
you pagan.
we were powering our house and our car on sunlight. And it just hit us. The Afghanistan war was already happening, and the drumbeat was loud for the Iraq war, and we knew the Iraq war was all about oil. So we were trying to raise a ruckus to let people know that you didn't need oil to transport yourself anymore. You could actually do it with sunlight generated kilowatt hours. So that's what got me to buy the vehicle and turned me into an activist. Literally within days, we heard about the OEMs bringing back the cars and crushing them. And so
now speaking of OEMs, our next panelist was embedded with the enemy at that time. I believe Chelsea Sexton was. Is my memory right? You were working for General Motors at the time?
Yes, I started working for Saturn at 17, selling cars to pay for college. And a few years in, EV1 was getting to the point of starting to come out. And so I moved over to that program, nerd first. I was just a bit of a brainiac, and I like the technology and the efficiency and all that Caltechy stuff that frankly is the second biggest reason anyone has ever bought an electric car in the last 25 years. And then I drove one for the first time on the back roads of Tennessee, where there were very few stoplights. And I learned some other things. My heart and other parts became more engaged. I learned I like torque and horsepower more than anyone rightfully should. And that I understood the first biggest group of people that will ever find an EV, which are those that love them because they're cool, fast, fun, new thing to have, sure. But when any EV driver will tell you, they are just better.
So your window was nerdiness.
And then performance. And to this day, performance is the more enduring one viscerally.
Well, don't be hasty. And now
I've had a while to think about it.
Yeah. Well, now, Dave, you also were, a pioneer. Tell me about your arrows.
Well, it's funny. I always like to call
introduce
myself.
yourself. I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. I should
Yeah.
have prompted
No
you.
problem.
That was my fault.
Yeah, no problem. My name's David. My wife and I live on a ranch in the Sierra foothills. I like to say we sort of became accidental activists because for a lot of the same reasons like these others, my wife was actually riding her bike to work every day. She said, hey, there's got to be something better. Little did we know that would take us on the adventure of meeting all these amazing people. These amazing people actually helped us save our electric Ford Ranger. So we were, with along some other cars, we still have the 1999 Ford Ranger in our garage still. And
wow.
It's because of this group that is done the work all these years. And what's really amazing, and I think we touched on this a couple times, is really when people drive an electric car, whether they didn't really care or whatever, they become this instant activist or evangelist or whatever you want to call it. And I think that was a message that everybody saw long ago. And the coolest part, I think, that we saw is even during those early protest days where we were saving the Ford Ranger, it's the technology and the thing that crosses all political barriers, right? Whether you're in it to get off foreign oil or you want to save the planet or whatever. In fact, one of the funniest moments I remember during this protest in Sacramento, freezing in winter, several of the people who were on this panel here were there, is we had the Republican chairman come by in a Hummer showing how much he supported us. So it just goes to show you that this is, it gives me hope given our current situation that the EV can bring us together eventually.
Yeah, well, now that's interesting. I was just going to ask about early activism and protest. This next, Jay Freeland, who suggested I introduce him as a dark, shadowy figure behind the powers. Were you there that day when the governor drove up in his Hummer or whatever?
Actually, I've seen the governor drive up in his Hummer a few times. I'm Jay Friedland, and I'm a Plug in America board member still to this day.
Thank you, sir.
And the former legislative director for about 10 years. And we got a lot of California and federal legislation through along the way. I guess what I would kind of highlight, in terms of legislative action or regulatory action, there's that pivotal March 2003 CARB board meeting. I think that sets everything up, and I'm sure Chris will weigh in a little bit more on that. But that's sort of the beginning of the end of the beginning of killing and then reviving the electric car. So we can go through a few more mirrors on that one. And then I think the really other big pivot point was right after President Obama got elected, the ARA, which is the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, got passed in February 2009. And that really actually expanded the incentives that were available for EVs. The original EV incentive was actually passed in the Bush administration, believe that or not. And back when we were a little more bipartisan. And the bill actually took and expanded that so that many, many more car makers could get in the game. And then we really grew to see cars grow everywhere in America. So,
oh my God, such legislative initiatives sound like science fiction now. I mean, I can't wait for the day that we get back to zero again. We have lost so much ground since those early wins. And Jennifer Krill, also with us. You were also in the mix then at the time. Tell me what you remember of that.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I'm Jennifer Krill. I'm currently the chair of the board of Plug in America, and I'm also the executive director of Earthworks, an organization dedicated to reducing the adverse impacts of mining and energy extraction. My favorite memory from the early days of EV activism were that my memories came from the times when we had experts on oil extraction come and speak about electric vehicles. We had activists working to clean up Chevron oil spill disasters in Ecuador. We had activists working against tar sands expansion in Alberta. We had Iraq veterans against the war. And when you think about this 2001, 2004, the era that is really filmed in Who Killed the Electric Car, just realize that, you know, we didn't have the Keystone XL pipeline yet. We didn't have the Dakota Access pipeline. Just think for a moment, if automakers had embraced EVs as strongly as all of us here did, we may never have had those pipeline battles. We may never have had as much fracking as we did. And the key message today, and I think part of the reason why all of us are here, is that from the front lines of oil and gas extraction, we cannot afford to lose another 2 decades. The time for these pollution-free, petroleum-free transportation opportunities, the time is here today.
And my argument is a strongly business oriented. It's a better business model going forward for all involved, and what problems there are in terms of, well, mining and extraction, for one, these are soluble to technology, so it's great. Do we have Chris here with us? Is the star Chris Payne, the director, with us? If not, I can tell you how I got involved in this.
Dan, I want to hear how you got involved.
There you are. Well, then let me just tee it up just a bit. Sorry, Chris.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, the director and producer, I guess, of Who Killed the Electric Car and the sequels, Chris Payne. Glad to have you with us, and nice to be had.
So, Dan, what is your recollection of how you agreed to be interviewed for that first film, and what your perspective on electric cars was? I think all of us would be interested to hear that.
Well, very briefly, I got a call from you and some nice people who said, "Would you do an interview at the newsroom?" Yes, you came in. You were in a hot bother about EV1 and so forth, and you had a story to tell. That it was General Motors was conspiring with the oil companies, and I have to tell people, I'm the only reason the film has a PG rating, and they'll have to tune in to earthxtv.org to see what word I used to get a PG rating. But in any event, I remember that there was a lot of holy fire in that interview, and then the movie came out, and it was a huge, I couldn't believe people had seen it, and it was a huge hit. It was really popular everywhere.
Okay, well, I remember how tough it was to get into for that interview, Dan. I really appreciate that you went on camera, and you know, sitting here in 2020, even whatever 5-6 years ago when we did the last film, how hopeful it was that someone with your perspective was really changing their tune on electric vehicles, and now you're hosting this amazing event with all of us here. It's I think that in some ways gives me more hope than anything else, because you're a very shrewd guy. You're not going to go for the tree hugger argument all by itself, and I think what helped make that movie was a success is that we had voices like yours, and even in the second film, you were pretty skeptical of Elon Musk. And in fact, I think Elon is what garnered us the PG rating in the second film for his score.
Oh, is that right? Oh.
You and Elon turned out to have a lot in common, I guess.
Oh, that's lack of filtering, perhaps. That's about all. No, and just may I just say, you're not doing yourself enough credit. California and Californians were 20 years ahead of the world. You talk about, your Martin Eberhard, your Tom Gage, your AC Propulsion, all these guys, Dr. Frank, all these guys. This was invented in California, and it took this long for the world to catch up. Now, of course, the inevitability, and not just to say the economics of it, are clearly in favor of electrification. I mean, it's dispositive now, but then it was a vision.
Yeah. Well, I think, folks like on this panel, and specifically Chelsea, who, was really risking everything to critique GM quietly to me, and other protesters who said, damn, this is a big story. And really, the point of our story, both that film and the second film, was to let everyone know that this was in fact happening, not just in California, but around the world. And if they were successful in crushing those 5,000 electric vehicles in 2003 after the exciting CARB meeting that you referenced earlier, that was a filmmaking challenge, by the way. if they were successful in snuffing out the information, then this kind of transition takes that much longer. So that's why we made the film. And I think that's why all of us got involved with letting people know how cool the electric car was.
Well, what about now? You mentioned Chelsea. There was a second film, The Revenge of the Electric Car, starring among others, Bob Lutz and Carlos Ghosn. And yes, and has there any point in retrospect that you might have suspected that we were greenwashed a little bit there? They hadn't committed. General Motors certainly hadn't committed the kind of strategic resources necessary to. I mean, we gave them a lot of quan in that movie, right? So, and where's Bob Lutz and Carlos Ghosn now? Anyway, Chelsea, what do you think about that?
I think all stories are more complicated than we like to think. And what I learned during the EV1 phase was two things: the ambivalence of the industry itself and how much individual action mattered. And it certainly started and to this day persists largely on the consumer advocacy side. The Electric Auto Association around since the 60s, the early EV1 Club and the other drivers clubs that have evolved since, and now Clean Cities coalitions and Evolve groups. And all of those have really pulled the industry into this more than the industry itself has wanted to go. That said, there are certain happy warriors that have always been in the larger companies and larger organizations that have also helped nudge some of these things along. The EV1 came about largely because Jack Smith stood on a stage on Earth Day in Washington, D.C. and said, we're going to make this thing. And Bob Lutz was key to the Chevrolet Volt, but so was every other person we were telling at the time, you should write automakers or call it automakers and tell them what you want. And the night the Volt was unveiled in Detroit in January 2007, Bob Lutz pulled me aside and said, oh my God, can you please stop getting your people to write to me now? And his daughter overheard it and said, don't you dare, because you have no idea how much those people changed my father's minds. And so all of this is and has always been kind of both sides working toward the middle. And I'm happy to pick apart any car programmer, any automaker, and outline the things that they have been more and less genuine about. But at the same time, what I will give GM credit for at the time was they were the first automaker back into the fray after Who Killed the Electric Car. People can take issue with the fact that they did a plug-in hybrid versus a pure EV, but they did what remains the most electrified plug-in hybrid ever built. And they were one of two automakers at the time that launched their cars nationwide. So yeah, have they done it perfect? No. I have lots of other issues I can talk about. But
perfect, the enemy
Volt,
of the good.
Right. And to the extent that to this day, we only have a small handful of automakers who have tried to sell whatever they want on a nationwide basis in reasonable volumes, Volt and Bolt both get credit on that front. Spark, not so much.
Now, before we let the time get away, this is the topic is lessons learned, lessons going forward. One of the big complaints about electrification is that they're hard to charge in the city. It's not very convenient. Now, Colette Devine, please introduce yourself and tell us your story of getting your condo owners to let you charge your cars. Are you the one with the horror story?
You're on mute.
Hi. Yes, hi. I'm Colette Devine. Thanks to Chris Payne, I was in Who Killed the Electric Car as a car owner with my gorgeous wife, J. Karen Thomas, who is an angel looking on us now since 2015. But back in 2004, or 2003, whenever it was, we owned a condo in West Hollywood. And actually, I was the president of the board. So I was able to say, hey, we should put in an electric car charger for me, and I will pay for it as long, and I'll allow it to stay here in perpetuity. So the next person who comes into this place with an electric vehicle can have a place to charge it. So that's what we did. And yeah, I mean, because I was president, it wasn't too hard to get that pushed through. But if you live in a city and you're not lucky enough to be, the president of your condo board.
I was going to say, what city, what part of Los Angeles was this, by the way?
That was West Hollywood.
West Hollywood, and you were the president. See, that's an extraordinary coincidence that you got that through as the president of the condo association. But anyway,
there was zero pushback because we paid for it. So
of
it's
course.
not you're paying. But that's the thing. In cities, you can't get landlords to do things, even if you do pay them. You know, that's why we need legislation, because money doesn't always talk. Legislation rules the day.
Do we know generally what the status of this? Yes, of course, back in those days, and even places forward thinking places like where Paul's place in Santa Monica, you know, you had to get the city to sign off on a lot of stuff that was unfamiliar. I wonder if it's any cheaper, better, easier now to find charging in the cities or have it installed than it was then. Paul?
Yes, absolutely, it is. We have passed several laws over the last 5 or 6 years now that enable renters of apartments or condos to install solar, as long as they have a dedicated parking space and they pay for the installation. There should be nothing in the way of it. There was a provision for several years that precluded rent control units from involvement in that law. But as of 1.5 years ago, that also changed. So now everybody who's a renter, if you have a dedicated parking space, you have the legal right to do it as long as you pay for it.
Okay, now I'm going to throw this open because it says throw this open to discussion here on my agenda. And I just thought of this question. A lot has changed. We have, you know, the governor saying 2035, end of gas-powered cars. We have Tesla announcing, energy densities that were science fiction just a few years ago. And we know that these devices, these electric cars, are going to be a phase change better 3 years from now. Is it reasonable to wait on your electric car? Is that a bargain that that consumers should be thinking about, with the notion that the next generation with proper batteries, I think it's fair to say, would be that much better? How do we feel about that? Jennifer, can you take a swing at that?
That the next generations of EVs would be better?
Be so good that some consumers might wait on their purchase now of a current generation EV.
I don't think that makes sense from a cost perspective, given the panel before, the description of the rate of charging. And second, the EVs are getting better all the time, but they're already better than an internal combustion engine. I think I'm
thinking particularly about cost. Cost seems to be, a great barrier, regardless of whatever incentive. So, sure. If you take, let's say, Elon's $35,000 car versus $25,000, that's $10,000 over 3 years. Will you save more than $3,333 if you wait? That would be the arithmetic that would drive that decision.
Yeah, but Dan, you know how it goes in the market, right? It's not unlike cell phones, right? There's a certain adoption that happens over time with any product, right? So you've got your early adopters, you've got your next round, and so on, and your neighbors, and the motion now that is happening. Plus, we've got a used market, right? So don't exclude that. You can get a Bolt if you go online right now. You can get a 230 mile plus range Bolt for $15,000. Right now, so that's starting to make the affordable option. It's only 2 or 3 years old, and Dan, so that can be a way for people to get in, and then move on to some newer cars that are coming out in 2 to 3 years.
Yes, Dan, Sherry, I'm sorry.
Well, I think you're kind of phrasing the question the wrong way. I mean, really, the question is, if I need a car other than the one I have now, or a new car, what's the best thing I can do right now? What makes the most sense? And electric cars make the most sense. If you can't afford one, then buy a used one, or at the worst, buy a used gasoline car. The last thing you want to do is reward the gasoline automakers by buying a new gas car that's going to be destroying the planet for decades. So what's the best thing you can do? Buy electric, or a used electric. Or if you buy a used gas car until you can do the electric.
Well, let me propose this then. The governor's 2035 mandate, to me, as a person who follows the industry, will almost be moot, because the industry is moving so much faster that the gas-powered vehicles and gas-powered technology will be a money loser in terms of the industry very soon, if not already. Certainly in terms of what Wall Street rewards it is. So maybe by 2035, there will be no hardship at all. We will all already transitioned. Chelsea, do you have a thought about that?
Yes, I love your optimism, bless your heart.
Thank
I
you.
look forward to seeing that.
Well, I hope I'm right, and I hope
Look, I hope you're right too. However, this is the latest in a series of executive orders, all of which have stepped up the goal. And what the substance of it is basically handing it over to CARB to try to figure it out. And CARB, ironically, since the Who Killed days, actually has taken back the lead on all things policy toward electrification in the United States. And there are a handful of programs that already have been pushing this direction. So in some ways it's a nice headline, but it's not exactly massive news compared to what's already happening. Right. And at the same time, there will be the inevitable policymaking process. The sausage making and the lobbying involved and all of those things that will probably land in a bit more flexibility, but also comes back to all of us to show up and participate the same way we always have been.
Jay, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would totally agree with Chelsea. I mean, there is sort of the great headline, and then there's all the work that we have to do to make it happen. And it's got to be legislative, and it's got to be, basically the regulatory agencies and the legislature in California first, and then it's got to happen nationally. I mean, we absolutely positively, we need to set some stakes in the ground. And also the other thing for all of us sitting here, I mean, think about the fact of gas cars disappearing by 2035 or 2040 or 2045. I mean, the sooner the better. And we're all working to do that every day. So I agree also, we each have to, do our part to buy electric cars and, and love them and live in them. Like, well, maybe not live in them, but you get the idea.
I'm not living in mine. I'm sorry. I draw the line at living in my electric car.
From a policy perspective, we also have to get beyond things available only in California and the CARB states. So if California wanted to do something to really impress me, whether it's LCFS credits, ZEV credits, or incentives, they would only apply to vehicles that are available nationwide. California is the only state in the union that has the market power to actually leverage EV availability for the entire country. Show me something feisty and creative like that.
Okay, but now, of course, it's that kind of hand-in-glove proposition. I think we all agree that the car makers have not done a bang-up job marketing these machines to consumers, explaining their benefits or making them widely available, which is why I tend to still be a little, I'm really kind of two minds about, embracing their sudden turnabout, especially Volkswagen Group. I'm very excited for them, but I still, remember 4 years ago. And but anyway, any Sherry, any thoughts about that?
Yeah, all the policy stuff, great. All the technology stuff, great. And the other third element of it is us, activists, drivers. 15 years ago, at the birth of Plug in America, the people you see on the screen, about 30 of us, were gathered at Dave and Heather's ranch in the Sierra foothills, trying to figure out our next steps. Because as you see in the movie, Who Killed the Electric Car, the gas car companies had destroyed most of the electric cars that existed. And we had been an informal group called don'tcrush.com. Well, we had saved as many from being crushed as we could. So what next? And over 3 days of talking and partying and discussing, we decided to go forward as a nonprofit group of drivers who can speak honestly about these cars and reach other people and help people know that these are out there. Because like you said, the car companies are not advertising them. Back then, we had the car companies had convinced the federal government to attack the clean air laws and try and stop these cars. Well, guess what? Right now, the gas car companies have convinced the federal government to attack the clean air laws, and it's not helping these cars. So we're the ones, Plug in America and Sierra Club and other groups have pushed this so that people know about this and have accelerated this market and this movement. And that's the other important thread of this, that everyone who's watching can be part of.
Very good. Well, now I don't want to forget, this was about a movie that was about a car about which that was crushed. And the worst PR move ever in a car company, if you ask me, in front of cameras. Chris's camera, I think you were running along beside or something. Oh, but Chris, I saw a EV1 in a parking lot in New York City less than 2 years ago. Now, are you aware of this car? Did you know this car existed?
I didn't know about a car.
It was apparently in a museum.
Oh, well, then, yeah, well, Chelsea can tell you all about that. Because GM, when they destroyed the program, put a bunch of museums, but they basically, what did Cuckoo's Nest, when you put the shocks on your head, they electrocuted the cars so they could never work.
Uh-huh. Well, I think it'd be fun to put a 427 Chevy in one. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just having a little laugh. No, Paul, any last thoughts on this?
Oh, well, I haven't heard of any loose EV1s out there except for one that a certain film director owns. But yeah, my last thoughts, I want to mirror what Sherry said earlier, because it to me is the most important. We have to kill the internal combustion industry dead. The sooner, the better. And the way to do that is to stop buying their products. So over 17 million cars were sold, new cars were sold last year in the United States at an average price over $38,000. So we need to get people to stop buying new gas cars. And if they can afford a $38,000 gas car, they can afford a $38,000 electric car. And a bunch of them, brand new, cost less than that. Even a Tesla Model 3 you can get for less than $38,000. So the goal here is to kill off the internal combustion industry as quickly as possible. And the way to do that is to stop buying their products yourself. Don't let your friends, your family, your coworkers, your neighbors, if you have any say-so in any big decision like that, tell them to hold off and wait. If they can't afford a $35,000 car, Tesla has announced a $25,000 Tesla in 3 years. Tell them to keep what they have and wait till then. And
well, they were set. Yeah, it's that's very good. And Colette, do you still have your electric car? It's a electric car charging spot, I should say.
Well, I no longer live in sorry. Am I muted? No.
You know, you're good now.
Okay. I no longer live in Los Angeles. Now I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. And my brother has the original electric car we owned, and he has that out in Northridge. But here in Nashville, which was becoming very progressive and very green, we have tons of electric car charging stations because the Nissan plant that makes the Leaf is in Smyrna, which is just a half an hour from Nashville. So you see lots of Leafs on the road. You see lots and lots of Leafs. So if every company had a plug-in available and really pushed it, even in the town where it's made, in the city, in the closest cities where it's made, and built that infrastructure, because not only do you need to have the cars, you need to have the infrastructure to charge them. So there's infrastructure at Vanderbilt University, where there's tons of doctors and nurses running around who have these cars. And to speak to the buying piece, now we leased a Leaf when we got here to Nashville, because that was easy to do. When my wife died, I no longer could just have a Leaf on my own, because I needed to get to Atlanta to work as an actor in Atlanta. So then I had the Prius. Then the battery finally went on that after 10 years. And I did not have, as now a widowed one income family, I can't afford a brand new electric car. And I really can't get an electric car as long as I have to keep going all the way to Atlanta, and I can't charge in between here and there easily.
Yeah.
So
One day soon, I imagine.
A conundrum for people. If you're in California, it's gravy wavy, but if you're in Nashville or Iowa or somewhere else, you're really going to be at the mercy of the distance of your daily commute and what your needs are going to be.
Yeah, it's interesting. Social acceptance can be very self-serving. Suddenly, in Texas, where they're building the Cybertruck, everybody's down with electric trucks, and so I love that sort of conquest sales. That's very cool to me. Let's see. Yes, go ahead, Chris. Start us with around the horn wrap up. What do you think people should do? What do you have to say to people who are watching now?
Well, what I have to say is that a lot of this is about the story and how the story of electric cars is told and how the future is told. And this group of people, it's like everyone here, I care for you all so much. I know it's so fantastic to bring your stories into the stories of the films that we made. And hearing each one of you present about electric vehicles, whether it's in legislative or through personal action or through pressuring industry or embracing technology. All of these stories are the ones that permeate into the culture and change what people are thinking about. And Dan, of course, you're an amazing storyteller. That what you write in the Wall Street Journal and what you write, these are the kinds of things that just seep in. And even with the example you just made in Austin, Texas, it's like the Cybertruck has a new story. It's not just about a California thing coming in and trying to beat out the old cars. So I guess my final comment is, first of all, thank you, Zan, for putting together. I feel like I'm at the original casting session for this film all these years ago. Thank you for putting this story out for everybody. But just to continue to embrace the idea of inclusive storytelling, this belongs to all of us. And the sooner we get off gasoline, of course, the better that our planet can try to heal itself.
All right, very good. Anyone else? Final thoughts before we wrap it up and hand it back to the estimable Alexandra and Marvin?
I just want to say, Dan, I agree so much with what Sherry said earlier. The power is really with us. That's why we came together and formed Plug-in America. And understanding the cautionary tales about this technology and the infrastructure that we need. Colette's story about the barriers and what she and all of us have done to overcome those barriers. Mm-hmm. You can follow this and keep up with it. You can join this movement. You can go to Plug-in America and follow what's going on with the states and what barriers need to be overcome in your area. There are Electric Auto Association chapters all across the country. You can join with groups in who are fighting this together and support the movement. And you can follow and support what local incentives and what state incentives people are championing in the area where you are to make sure that this is technology that's accessible to everyone.
And Paul?
Yeah, I want to make one final comment about the political side of it and the money in politics. The 65 million people who voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016 give about $130 billion per year to the oil industry. That's based on a $2,000 a year average in America, and that's from an EIA website. So the $130 billion a year over the last 4 years, over $500 billion that the voters for Hillary Clinton have given to the oil industry. The oil industry spent over $1 billion helping to elect Trump last time, and they're going to spend close to $2 billion this time. So if you need any more incentive to get off of the gas car and switch to electric, I think that should be at least part of your consideration.
Quite a declaration. Yes, Chelsea, sorry, go ahead.
Since we're in Texas and everything is bigger there, I will mention that the first and largest consumer-facing electric vehicle conference ever happened in February in Austin, and we are coming back to Austin next year, spring or fall, depending on all things pandemic, but Fully Charged Live. We'd love to see all of you there. But to all of the points that everybody has said, there are lots of ways to get involved. And I will add the fact that there are lots of voices missing. So grab those people that you see aren't being included, that as much as we talk about cars, it's not just about cars. We end up way too siloed into a circular firing squad. So electric bikes, if you want to try one of those, electric buses, route for public charging in your workplace, whatever. There's lots and lots of ways to get involved. And we have to be a little bit more careful about inclusivity of people, but also of topics. And at the end of the day, this is a transit conversation, this is a biking conversation, this is a housing conversation, and all of those have to come together.
Very good. That's true.
Actually, yeah, Dan, I'd love to add one more thing just to echo what Paul was saying. Get out there and vote. It's 40 days away. You can make a difference. Which administration gets elected will have a gigantic impact on what happens with electric cars, the environment, and a whole host of other issues.
Colette, anything along those lines in your part of the world?
Absolutely. That we all have to vote, and the car makers need to get that price down as soon as possible. So, because I'm not looking at the overall cost, I'm looking at, can I afford that car note every month?
I'm sorry, does Tennessee have a rebate deal? Does Tennessee have an EV credit?
Not to my knowledge.
No, they don't.
Oh, too bad. That seems like they ought to.
Yeah, I just want to remind people, this is Mark here, that, used electric cars are really quite available. That, for actually between $5,000 and $15,000 today, you can get yourself an electric car. And if you are like most people and you don't drive to Atlanta every week for an acting job, you might have a commute that's 15 or 20 miles away. And if you've got an outlet in your garage and maybe an outlet at work, you can save yourself $100 or $200 a month by simply buying a used electric car that somebody had bought 4 or 5 years ago and traded up because they loved it so much. They now have one that goes 300 miles, but you might not need that.
Like a BMW i3. I'm lightly used i3 is a spaceship. You couldn't ask for more. It has a little dinky battery relative to everything else, but the rest of it is perfection in car building. So I think it is time that we hand it back to Alexandra and Marvin. Thank you all so much. What a pleasure to be part of this reunion of Who Killed the Electric Car. Maybe we'll have yet another sequel, maybe Marvel will sponsor. Anyway, thanks so much. And back to Alexandra. Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you, Dan. What a great panel. I really enjoyed seeing you all and hearing the amazing things you had to say. Want to give a plug for, no pun intended, for used cars too. 5 of the 8 electrified vehicles that we've had in our household have been used. They're amazing. And the 2 that are in our garage now were purchased used. So anyway, thank you all to panelists, the webinar organizers, the sponsors, and you viewers for joining us today at this National Drive Electric Week event in Dallas-Fort Worth. We're going to run a few slides right now that will show you resources, a thank you list, and also an in memoriam of electric car heroes, including Jay Karen, Colette Devine's wife, whom she mentioned earlier. Thank you all for being here. And I'm going to turn it over to my wonderful co-host, Marvin. It was wonderful spending these last couple hours with you, Marvin.
Always a pleasure, Alexandra. And many, many thanks to all our panelists. This has just been a fascinating experience. Thank you to all the viewers to come to the National Drive Electric Week webinar. And I just hope that I can get you people into an electric car. All you people out there, if you've never driven an electric car, everybody I've ever gotten in one bought one. So you've been warned.
You, Marvin, is that right? And come over and get in your cars.
Come on over. You know where I live. And also we want to, don't forget to watch the documentary that's coming up, Who Killed the Electric Car? It's coming up right after this.
You'll see a lot of familiar faces if you were watching this webinar. And we look forward to seeing you next year, and have a wonderful, wonderful Drive Electric Week.